everybody, Joey Barton. Obviously, these halftime talks, and I've said it many times for you, different aspects. Obviously, we had Nick on to give the insight on the scheme, like he went on that you're on. We've had Groves on, which was very insightful as well. And obviously, Dean Hooper, obviously, mental health and all he does. So I'm hoping you're all young enough or old enough to remember Joey. Those that aren't, I'm sure you will after. You can Google or whatever. But thanks for coming on, Joe. I really appreciate it. I know you're really busy and stuff, so really appreciate it. And for me, what was my reason on asking Joey? I'll tell you. It was about not judging a book by its cover. It's about character, mentality, drive, taking responsibility, wanting to be better, self-reflection. That's the sort of things that I think you might get out of it, everybody. On a personal note, I've got two major recollections of being with Joey. One was when you was a young lad, Joey, coming over to the first team for the first time at Manchester City. Fearless, single-minded, driven. It was unbelievable. And it stuck with me to this day. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it, and I don't think I ever will. So that really stuck with me. And the second thing that stuck with me was when we was recently on our well, I say recently, it was a few years back now.
Back now, mate. Yeah.
On our A license. So that young, fearless teenager, all of a sudden was a man, obviously, but someone that was intellect, thoughtful, and everything else that goes with it. So they're my two lasting memories of being with Joey, and obviously there's loads in between when we were teammates. So I wanted to kick him in training and so on and so forth. And Joey had a profound effect on my career without probably really even realising. Obviously, Joey was coming through at Manchester City. He had blown everyone away with, like I said, that first time he come over to the first team. Not just with his mentality, but obviously with his ability. And Kevin Keegan pulled me in the office. I had 2 years left on my contract. And he said, look, a club had come in for me, but it's up to me if I went. But he said, I can't promise you football because we've got a young Joey Barton coming through. So I took it all into account and decided it was probably right for me to leave. So
cheers, Kev. Hi, guys. Great to speak to you. Yeah, look, I always remember that. I always remember you phoning me, Kev, after that first season and saying, thanks, I've got to move my kids out of school. I've got to pack the house up, move my house and all that. And, obviously we were laughing about it at the time, but that is the nature of professional football. It is, the players are paid very, very well and ridiculous amounts compared to the normal working person. But obviously it comes with a great cost, obviously intrusion into your personal life and, the ability of clubs to, take your kids and flip the lives on the heads because they've had a change of manager or a change of direction in which they want the football club to go. And it's tough to take at times, but again, it's an industry where you have to be incredibly resilient in order to survive. To round that circle, Kev, just to go back to obviously coming through at City. For me, I'd suffered rejection at a young age. I'd obviously been in Everton's academy from the age of 8, 9, and was a boy at Evertonian. So, my dream was to play for Everton, and never ever seen myself playing for any other club. And I was really well thought of up until the age of about 14. And I never really grew. Really, that the long and short of it was, when everybody else was getting hairy chests and hairs everywhere else, I wasn't. And people went past me and beyond me because of the physicality and their ability to dominate games where the opposition had, a similar physical output. And I thought, you grow 15, 16, 17. I never, I was released by Everton at 14 for being too small. Signed for Manchester City the next day, who at the time were in the Championship. It was kind of Joe Royle had just appeared on the scene. And that first season I was at City was the season, I think the second season you won the playoff final, Kev. You scored that goal, obviously the second probably most iconic City goals, isn't it? You and Weaver's penalty save is probably slightly behind Aguero, but you know, not by much in terms of iconic Manchester City fans' moments of certainly the last period. And I remember watching City go from Championship to First Division, and then obviously back with Joe in that famous playoff final win. I think they went up to the Premier League not long after that, and then I think back down, and then Kevin Keegan came in, and it went back up again. So it wasn't like I'd left Everton and I went to another Premier League side. I'd actually gone, to a kind of bottom end Championship side that was about to go into the third tier with City at the time. And things weren't straightforward. Again, I'd struggled with size, didn't really get in the youth team. At under 18, the youth cup's the biggest thing. I was on the bench for the first round of that, and a lad who played centre midfield, a lad called Barry Hogan. Glenn Whelan, who played with me and played for me as a manager later on, was in centre midfield, and a lad who I played with at Everton called Barry Hogan was a good player. And Barry had a tough first period. I think we were getting beat 1-0, and he came off, and I went into central midfield. I'd been playing left midfield because a lad had fell sick 24 hours before the FA Youth Cup game, so I'd played left midfield. I haven't been on the bench all year. Then the lad in centre mid had a nightmare, so I went into central midfield. We ended up drawing the tie. I kept my place for the second game. And he never seen the reserves or the first team pictured again. He was ahead of me for a long period of time. And a similar thing happened in the first team. I think I had Terry Dunfield and some really good players ahead of me in terms of in the reserves and into the first team picture. Glenn Whelan was ahead of me again. And, gradually, just kept working, kept turning up every single day, putting the hard yards in, trained every day like it was an FA Cup final because, I was so far behind everybody else. And from a young age, I just developed that drive. And it wasn't that I wanted to. I'd wished I was mega talented and could turn up 5 minutes before training and, be the best player. But I just didn't have the skill set or the ability to be able to do that. So I knew I had to make the best of every single thing I could, whether that was sleep, nutrition, training performance. I'd stay after training and put the hours in, and I just dedicated my life to football. And it paid me back, really. That's the reality. I put the hard work in, the hard yards in, and I'm one of the lucky ones that it paid back. There's a lot of people who put them yards in who maybe don't get the just rewards, whether it be an injury or a coach that doesn't fancy them. I was fortunate enough to be in the right place at the right time with the right attitude, and managed to have a successful football career.
So going on from that, Joe, obviously, I knew bits and pieces. There was pitfalls along the way. How did you deal with that as a young player? It seemed that from the outside, obviously once I'd left, it seemed like everybody tried to tarnish you with the same brush because of one incident or two incidents. And I know, look, some of them I would say that you may have hold your hands up, and I've seen that you've done that a number of times, but some you didn't, and you seem to get tarnished, and it must have been really difficult as a young player trying to make your way in the game, but then getting tarnished and bad press off everybody.
Yeah, the British media, for want of a better word, tend to decide relatively early on that there's going to be a good cop, bad cop. And that is always in a state of flux as well. Do you mean they tend to build you up to knock you back down? For me, I got off on the wrong foot with them, and the kind of rest is history. So then it becomes a fact of they don't tend to focus on anything that you do positive, but they obviously amplify everything you do negative. So I'm not going to sit here and say I was completely blameless in it. I've been involved in far too many indiscretions to say I was a pacifist and a peaceful person who was travelling on a journey that's been made by the media of me being a kind of person who resorts to violence relatively quickly at certain times. And for me, where I grew up was quite a obviously a foundation in the way you were. I don't think I'd have made it as a player if I didn't have that background, because it was quite rough and ready, and you had to be able to defend yourself in order to survive on a football pitch, and obviously that helped me translate into going into stadiums where there would be 20, 30, 40,000 people, and I was fortunate that it improved my performance rather than affected it negatively. Some people unbelievable from Monday to Friday on the training pitch, and then you put them in the big match scenario, and it doesn't quite happen for them. And there's other players who are the total opposite, who are terrible Monday to Friday. I mean, Kev, you were one of them, but tended to play well on a Saturday.
Cheers, mate.
And then there's other people who do neither, and you never really hear about them. So yeah, for me it was something that I'd brought on myself. I brought that media attention on myself, and there was no point sulking about it. I had to create a worldview where I used that negativity or that kind of world against me scenario. I used that to my advantage, to the point where later on in life, when I delved into kind of human psychology, and I'd had a lot of problems, certainly with drink and anger issues, I ended up getting some psychological help for that. Went to Sport and Chance Clinic. I met a great friend and mentor of mine, a guy called Peter Kay. He's not the comedian, but he was certainly as funny as Peter Kay. He's passed away now, but we delved into male psychology and went down a route map, first and foremost to understand why I behaved the way I did, and then the processes behind that. And then for me to be in a position where I wanted to be a father of children and have that responsibility, I felt it was very, very important to understand my inner workings and my inner being, if I was going to bring another human life form into this world and be responsible for it. And through the process of that, you realize that it's constantly something that you have to keep working at. It's not something you ever master. And I think with my mindset, I began a journey in terms of my own exploration of my own mind, to be able to deal with the world as it was presenting itself to me. But also, at some point I knew I'd want to become a father. I'd want to become a coach. I'd want to be somebody who would mentor, help people in these scenarios, because I'd been somebody who'd been helped by others. And, that process for me was fascinating, and it allowed me to certainly have a different way of dealing with criticism or pressure that other people would maybe bring to you. I mean, it wasn't it's never like a solution that you solve overnight and that's it. You never go back to it. It's something that I still have to work at constantly, something that I still have to practice on a daily basis in order to kind of maintain that constitution. And again, you're not always perfect. There's days when I get up and I don't feel fantastic, and I don't feel like I can deal with the world. And that's, at 38, 39. But now I do have, coping strategies and mechanisms to be able to do that, whether it's somebody to be able to pick the phone up to, whether it's somebody who is a close confidant of mine who I can, go and have a share with, have a cup of tea with, have a gab with, or whether it's a family member or even sometimes outside of that. I think sometimes outside of that, it's important to have a kind of sounding board, so that you can obviously make better decisions, and also don't feel like, the world's closing in on you in times, because trust me, when you've stepped out of line the way I have on occasion, and the national media come for you, it's a very, very lonely place.
If you were laid back, Joey, right, as a kid and all laid back, would have you had that impression? Certainly, like I've said, on me, on others, would have that got you to the forefront?
Probably not. I mean that's the thing, isn't it? We're all individual. I mean, that's the one thing. I take that into my kind of coaching ethos now. It's bespoke to every individual that you meet, because you see a lot of similarities in people, but every single person, like the fingerprint, is completely and utterly unique. I always believe, certainly in my experience, that I would much prefer to work with somebody who has a fire in the belly, a quirkiness, because it shows the passionate, it shows the care, it shows that there's something driving them internally. I struggle to work with people who are quite, flat in terms of their emotional kind of spectrum. You do get people who, certainly on the volatile scale of emotion, I would probably try to keep within a bandwidth, never getting too high, never getting too low. But again, that bandwidth fluctuates from person to person. So it's really, really tough. If I didn't have that, no, I think it would have been very, very difficult had I been not as driven as I would have been, because I don't think I had the ability not to have that kind of drive. I mean, you do meet on occasion, mercurially talented, gifted people who don't have to work hard at things, or so it seems on the surface. But usually when you dig and delve behind that, there's either a process that they follow, or there is an incredible work ethic, or certainly something behind them which drives them, which is not visible to the kind of naked eye. And as you travel through life, you kind of meet these people. Everybody. I've met people from all walks of life. I've obviously been to jail. I've had 6 weeks in a month in Walton, and then I had 3 months in Strangeways. So, you certainly meet an eclectic bunch of people on the life journey I've had. And I met people inside in jail who were really, really intelligent people. They were in for kind of white collar crimes or different types of crimes, but with the right direction and with certain things panning out for them in a different way in their lives, they could have gone on to be incredibly successful people. As it was, they made a few bad life choices, and the veneer of civilization is very, very fragile. I think if anything, the modern pandemic is teaching us is how kind of rational people can quite quickly flip over and become very, very irrational in a short space of time with the right circumstances. So I think we all live on that. If I'm honest, I think we're all capable of, being destructive, being influenced for the wrong reasons, getting addicted to things for the wrong reasons that can be detrimental to your life. I think everybody has that capability within. But on the flip side of that, I also think everybody has the capability of greatness within, or the ability to get addicted in a positive way. For me, it was football. But at times it's spiraled out, and it's, I've had problems with drinking for years, where I thought I was an alcoholic. I had 2 years where I stopped drinking because I thought that would solve my kind of mental problems, but it didn't. I realized it wasn't actually alcohol that was doing it. And then you delve further and further into it. A really good friend of mine is a guy called Kevin Dutton, Dr. Kevin Dutton, who's professor of psychopathy at Oxford University. We've become great pals over the year, and he's wrote a number of good books, but one of them being The Good Psychopath. And he talks about how high-level achievers are on the psychopathic scale. They don't sit at the kind of serial killer end of it, but if you were putting marker posts down for high-attaining individuals across business, sport, lifestyle, they tend to be on the scale, the psychopathic scale, because you need those traits, being very focused, very driven, almost addicted to your profession, to your craft, to be a high level achiever in it. So people tend to say to you, I mean, I've seen a lot of stuff with Dr. Steve Peters, and I speak with Steve Black, who's a great friend of mine, who's probably the best I've ever worked with in the world. He's famous for working with Johnny Wilkinson, as most people there will know. He was the guy who was worked very closely with Johnny Wilkinson in terms of driving Johnny towards a world-class level. And me and Blackie always spoke about, if you've heard or read any of the Steve Peters stuff, the chimp paradox. He talks about speaking to this internal computer metric with this chimpanzee at the hub of it, stop you making poor decisions. Some might have read it, some might not. If not, it's a great book to read for young people. And he talks about kind of the flame inside, that emotion, that anger. A lot of people want to control that. They want to put it in a box and try and focus that energy. And I do understand you do need an element of control with that, but you certainly don't want that put out. You need that fire in young people. You need that fire bubbling. Even if that fire makes mistakes from time to time or gets over enthusiastic, I don't mind that. I can work with that, because it's about harnessing and channeling that internal drive, that internal passion. And what I wouldn't want to work with, or what I'd find really difficult, would be, if somebody's flatlining and it's, do you want to be successful? Yeah. You're not going to be successful if that's your output on life. You've got to go and take life and really grasp hold of it and take it and push yourself and drive yourself on, rather than try and be the best behaved, try and be the calmest, try and be the most sensible. That for me is not where it's at. As you said earlier, Kev, the edge, push yourself further, take a chance. I went into Fleetwood. I'd never managed a club in my life. I'd come off being banned off the radio for a year. I'd been a player. I'd done my coaching badges, and Kev will tell you, I turned up to do my B licence, felt I knew everything about football. Me and David Ely were the first two on separate pitches. I stopped halfway through and walked off. I said, I've got that wrong. I can't do it. I want to come back and do it later. And at the time, I thought it was my driving test, and you'd fail if you came off. But I was still prepared to go, no, I'm not doing this well. I've not got off on the right foot here, and I need to stop it because I'm making a bit of a tit of myself, and I need to do this properly. And you have to sometimes just hold your hand up and say, hey, I can't do this. I need help. It's the hardest thing to do sometimes, but you find people are more receptive to you. They really want to help you. And, when you're open, honest, and you speak to people at that level, I find you get, a lot more out of them when you show them how much it matters to you. There's a great saying, people don't care what you know until they know how much you care. And I think that's massive. So show people you care every single day, turning up, being enthusiastic, asking questions. I came over to the first team, as Kev spoke before, and I remember my dad saying to me, you're not there to be the friend. They're better players than you. They've got better contracts than you. They're established, they're experienced professionals. If you go over and want to be friends with them, you're not going to get ahead of them. You're not going to take their shirts. You're not going to get their contract. You're not going to take their place in the team. And I went across with that mindset of, I'm competing with these lads every single day. I went into, tackles like it was a match. And, I remember getting sent off from training by Kevin Keegan and sent in a number of times. Spoke earlier about remembering me coming across, and he wouldn't remember me on football ability, because I don't think I had as much to capture people's attention, but certainly in terms of how much I wanted to be a player and wanted to impose myself on the senior figures. And I didn't care, because the seniors would come in the dressing room and say, oh, you busy bastard kicking people. I didn't care. I was like, some of the younger players who'd gone before me or gone at the same time were really concerned with how the first team thought of them, upsetting the first team. And I knew early on, I thought, I'm not. I'm here to take their jobs, to take their careers, to take their livelihoods, and I can't be friends with them. If in the process I can stay friends with them, great. But, I'm here for me, for my family, to push myself on. And unfortunately, there's 40 players here and there's only 11 jerseys available on a Saturday. And it's kill or be killed in the jungle. And that was the mindset I took. And that, for me, made me successful. I do look back on it, Kev, if I'm honest, and regret bits of it, because, I probably kicked people too hard and put people's nose out of joint. And I wanted to be friends with everybody. I'm not someone who doesn't want to be friends with everybody, but also I wanted to be a footballer more. So would I have changed things? Probably not. Because at the end of the day, we weren't playing tiddlywinks. We were competing for jerseys, and in our industry, it is quite cutthroat, and it is, as I say, I've always been great friends with you. You were always good with all of us as young lads, and obviously we've maintained friendship via coaching courses and over the years. And I wouldn't have want to seen your family move, but the alternative for me was I had to move.
You made me go back to the old smoke, mate. Back to West Ham. It didn't work out for me, but I hold no regrets, mate. Like I said, I've never seen nothing like that, and I don't think I ever will. It was unbelievable, to be brutally honest with you. So on the flip side, Joe, some of the stuff that happened along the way, obviously you went on to have an unbelievable career. Newcastle, QPR, Marseille, Burnley. do you think some of the stuff that went on maybe, and look, it was an unbelievable crowd, and look, England cap as well, by the way, which doesn't normally happen for players. I've seen it in the past with the likes of Julian Dix, didn't get an England cap because of the person they thought he was. So that in itself is incredible. But do you think some bits that have happened in your career along the way maybe hindered you slightly?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, you can't have the rap sheet I had and expect it not to have held you back at some point. I mean, even in the coaching space, probably, you know, it's something I'm going to have to work enormously harder to overturn, because, you know, you know, from a distance, people think I'm some kind of caged animal that you know is let out
but everybody
every
does,
now
Joey.
and again. Yeah,
Everybody I've spoke to, like if your name comes up in conversation, someone go, "Oh, did you play with Joey Barton?" I say, "Yeah." They go, "Oh, he's a lunatic. He's a fug." I say, "Well, hang on a minute. You don't actually know him," and that's why I started the whole halftime talk off with, "Don't judge a book by its cover. Don't let people make your mind up on people until you know or find out or speak to them." And so I think that's really important as people to not do that. So that was obviously a big thing for me with regard to this, and hopefully the students
see how I flip. Like, again, I think it's about mindset. Like you know, people are going to say what they're going to say about you. If you're successful and you're doing well, people are going to critique you, whether it's your Facebook, local community Facebook group, if you've got a nice, whatever it is. The world we live in now is, there's a lot of people who get a lot of happiness by putting up other people, their happiness by making other people feel terrible, which is unfortunate, but it is the nature of the world we live in, especially with social media. And, you know, you see the comments online or on people's Instagram, and, you know, there is some positive, but obviously at the moment there's a lot of negative. And, you know, for me, I was always taught, you know, I had good, strong grandparents in terms of my nan was, you know, very, very driven in terms of her mindset for me. You know, she was like, well, if he can do it, you can do it, kind of. She also told me very early, it's none of your business what anybody else's opinion of you is. You know, it's your job to just do what you do. And if you're going to be a leader and you're going to be the person that you are, because she could sense relatively early I was quite strong-willed, and had obviously a decent head on my shoulders. She said, you're going to polarize people, you're going to upset people. And she'd been a working class woman who'd had 5 kids and worked the job. And she'd moved up from kind of working in the factory to like floor manager. And she said, you know, people will be going, oh, look at her, Julie Barton, she's doing this, she's that. She said, I never cared. I was more worried about putting food on the table, my kids having nice clothes, you know, obviously being able to buy them the stuff they need to buy at Christmas. And, you know, the sniping, the jealousy kind of people who didn't want to put the work in didn't affect her. And I kind of carried that through. You know, for me, it was, you know, I knew that if I was going to be successful, people were going to talk about me, who I don't know. I mean, people still come up to me now and they speak to me as if they've met me and they know me really, really well, and I don't know them. They've watched me play on the telly over the years or whatever it is. And you know, a lot of doors opened for me because of who I was. You know, the infamity of me, or whatever it is, famous, infamous, I don't know what it is, but people recognizing you. You know, some people do have bad opinions of you. That's natural. You know, before they meet you, you can't do anything about that. But also, you know, doors open and you get opportunities. And I always remember meeting people who I'd idolized as a kid and being kind of underwhelmed by them. You know, the great saying of never meet your heroes kind of thing. And I flipped it on its head, Kev, in terms of, you know, people are going to say stuff about me I have no control over it. You know, it's also none of my business. But also they're talking about me, and I don't, you know, so that must be a positive. If I must be doing something if they're talking about me. And then the second phase of that was, you know, for me, I constructed a world where, you know, they were wasting more energy on me if it was a negative. So you know, the focus for me was, you know, if I turn up and meet somebody and everybody's got such a low opinion of me, well, if I can string a sentence together, if I can have a conversation with you, I'm already ahead. Do you know what I mean? Whereas people build people up and then you meet them and you're really, really underwhelmed because they're not that impressive. Whereas with me, if I don't punch it in the face within the first 5 seconds, everybody thinks I'm sound. Everyone goes, oh, he's a lot better than what people expect him to be. So I don't mind starting from that lower kind of, like, you know, people are going to have their opinion of you, no control over it. If people have got a low opinion of you, well, fine, because, you know, it's a lot easier for me to turn up and then straight away, once you meet me, they go, God, this is just not how I expected them to be. So I see that as a positive. You know, everyone who meets me tends to go away with a better impression of me than when they've met me before, because of the kind of media perception of me. So I've flipped it into a positive in my head. You know, I when I first started using Twitter, you know, the kind of retweets. Well, I see other people now as you know, you kind of human retweeting people. So every person I met, sign autograph for, who meets you and has a positive impression, then goes away, and whichever social media space they're in or whatever they do in their life, they go, no, I've met him and he was this, this and this. And over a period of time, that just builds and builds and builds. I mean, unfortunately, you know, we're not going to meet everybody on the planet. So there's going to be a lot of people who dislike you, and it's okay. That's okay. Not everyone has to like you. You don't have to be best friends with everybody. As long as the people who love and respect you know who you are and care about you, and the people that you respect care about you, you know, the rest of the world's irrelevant, really.
So like we said, unbelievable career. England cap. That must have been some moment, Joe, mustn't it?
Yeah, obviously to play for your country. I wish I'd have done. You know, a few lads go and do the Northern Ireland and Wales and Scotland ones and nick a load of caps when they've never been.
Are you talking about me there, Joey?
No, mate. No.
I'm Irish. I've just lost my accent, mate.
No, you know,
I remember you saying it might have been on the course we was on when you said, I think you said to me how many caps you get. I think 32, and you went, "Oh, my one England cap's worth 100 Northern Ireland caps," which made me laugh. And look, it may be true as well, mate. If I'm totally honest,
no.
I couldn't have had you taking my Northern Ireland shirt off me as well, mate.
No. I would never qualify for Northern Ireland. I could have done Southern Ireland, I think, before, but once the new rules come in, I think I could have done the Southern Ireland when Niall Quinn and Tony Cascarino and that were there, because
right.
that far, but I don't think I could do it under the new rules. And you know, for me, I was an Englishman, you know, proud, loved England, wanted to play for England or World Cup. So for me, it would have been strange to go and play for, you know, one of the other home nations, because I'd always wanted to play for England. And I thought, if I'm not good enough to play for England, then I'm not good enough to be capped internationally. And I didn't think you could have a chance of winning a World Cup or the Euros with any of the home nations. I thought, well, it eats into your international breaks and recovery protocols for your personal career. But it was an incredible experience, and in terms of, you know, playing against all these, you know, players. And when you spoke earlier about when the lads had asked you, or the people had asked you the question about, you know, to your younger self, what would you say to your younger self? When I was out running before, it kind of kept, I was thinking about that, you know, what you'd said, and I thought, what would I actually say to my younger self? And it would probably revolve around what happened to me, the experience of getting in that England squad. You know, I got in at, I think, 23, 24. And, you know, I had some incredible players ahead of me, Lampard, Gerrard, to name but a few. Certainly they were in the starting berths, Michael Carrick, Scott Parker, Gareth Barry, all in the kind of squad. And, you know, you go away on the international trip. I haven't done well for the 21s. You know, finally got a call up. We were playing Spain at Old Trafford. It was when Wembley was being refurbished. And, you know, you want to pit yourself in training every day and just to see where you are. And, you know, I knew I was behind Frank and Stevie based on, you know, the clubs they were playing for and the output they were given. But it's kind of everybody else that you need to, you know, to get in a big squad for the major tournament. You kind of need to, you know, show a bit of versatility, I think, if you're a player like me, and also show that, you know, if anything happens to the main men, you know, there's somebody here who you can hang your hat on to get you the performance. You know, Nicky Butt done well in that World Cup, I think in Japan off a similar foundation. And I felt, you know, this is a chance for me to get in there. You know, there was the big questions about whether Lampard and Gerrard could play with each other. I felt I could do the stuff that both of them weren't particularly great at, which would allow both of them to do the stuff that they were great at. So maybe you could get it in a three-man midfield, because there'd kind of been a noise around it for a while, because they couldn't put Scholes back in it, and they were still searching for the jigsaw, you know, to go and win a major tournament. So you know, me being me, I'm thinking that could be me. You know, they haven't found a solution yet. So if they haven't found one, you know, there's a chance it could be anybody. And I joined up with that camp and obviously went to training the first day, and the team was picked. And that was the disappointing thing. You know, the team was picked. It was you know, decided already. So, you know, you kind of go, okay, right, let's get your head around this. Let's make a positive impression. And I felt in the 18 minutes I got, I did make a positive impression. And that was the last time. I seen an international squad. So I'd had a few indiscretions in between the squads getting named the next time, and I was on bail for something that I ultimately got acquitted of, and I never got put in a squad. I think the next junction was when I was at Newcastle. I was playing as well as anybody in the country, albeit from right midfield, and Fabio Capello was asked about it and said, no, I can't trust him. You know, he looks like somebody who could be sent off at any moment. And, you know, if the international manager thinks that about you, you know, you're never going to get...
You're struggling.
You're never going to get in. So, you know, when I heard him say that, I thought, you know, that's the kind of ship sailed on my international career. But, you know, I enjoyed it. You know, there's many better players than me that's, you know, never got a cap. I'm proud to get the one cap and to say forever I'm an England international. I played against Spain, who went on to win the Euros and the World Cup after that. So Javi, David Elbelda, I played 18 minutes against them. So you're going, okay, I know where the levels are. And I felt I could compete. You know, was I going to get out and win a World Cup for England? Probably not. Was I going to dispose Gerrard and Lampard out of the team? Probably not. But, you know, I felt I could compete at that level, and just having that experience of it, you know, for me was incredible, and it's given me a hunger as a manager and a head coach to go on and achieve everything I never achieved as a player. You know, so I done okay as a player, but obviously I've got a lot of stuff that I want to achieve that I wasn't, you know, good enough or fortunate enough to achieve with my body.
You talked about coping strategies. Did they change over the course of your career, and did you have one constant strategy that you used throughout?
They do alter. I mean, because you meet different people who give you wisdom and advice, and you know, at the right junction. I always find it tends to find you at the right junction when you kind of least expect it, but when you kind of most need it. And you know, for me, is the one piece of advice. I think Steve Black's. We used to go on about loads of things and setting rules, and you know, for me, the one adage is use your good judgment at all times. You know the difference between right and wrong. So you have to be very, very careful about setting your course by the outside world, because it is so volatile, and it is, you know, certainly at this moment in time, you know, you can't retain a normal rational mind if you allow outside influences to have effect. So I would say using your good judgment at all times is key. You know, I've obviously overstepped the mark on a number of occasions, and you know, you don't need anyone to tell you. You know when you've done something wrong. Other people then come along and confirm it, and maybe, you know, amplify it so that you're in no uncertain terms. But on the whole, if you can brush them teeth in the morning and look in the mirror and be okay with what's looking back, then I think, you know, life, you're the only person that you have to spend 24 hours a day with. So if you don't like yourself, what chance have other people got?
All right. I was just wondering, what was it like playing football abroad? Obviously in Marseille in France. How did you experience him? Yeah.
Well, obviously, I picked the language up relatively quickly, which made...
I on the back of that, answer that question, but I want to know about that interview, Joey. Was that put on, or did you just go into a little bit of a French twang?
Let me answer that question. So, yeah, you know, and that spawned out of chaos. You know, that was obviously at the Aguero incident at the Etihad Stadium, which luckily was a very, very low-key game, so it's never been replayed on that much traction. So yeah, I was banned for 12 games. So I unfortunately I hold many records with the FA, but I don't have the top record. Cantona still. I had a good go at getting them. I think I've got second highest ban and fourth highest ban. But Eric Cantona with his crystal kick still has the record. So I tried my best to usurp him, but wasn't able to do it. And I've gone out to France then, and you know, Olympique Marseille, the only side in France that's won a European Cup, Champions League, and an enormous club, like to the scale I've not seen before. You know, it would be probably similar for playing for Liverpool or Manchester United in England. You know, 14, 15 million fans in France alone. Every airport you travel to, home or on away games, is met by, you know, at least 2, 3, 4, 500 people in the airport waiting for the team to land. Obviously, every away game you play, you take half of the stadium's allocation, or certainly a massive part of it, and just an enormous football club. And you know, they embraced me from the get-go. So I landed in the airport, and Marseille's a bit of a rebellious city. It sees itself almost like a republic within France, obviously situated on the south coast, and it's very anti-France in many ways. Very similar to Liverpool, you know, almost like, you know, it's a little bit anti-London, anti-monarchy. You know, it's a bit of an independent kind of republic, albeit it sits under the banner of the United Kingdom. And Marseille was similar, big ports, big football city, except in Liverpool, where I'm from, there's 2 teams. In Marseille, there was only one side. So barring the language, everything else was very similar to my home growing up football background. And you know, I was able to tap into that relatively quickly. I understood the people, I understood what they wanted out of the team and the players that played within the team. And as I say, the minute I touched down on the tarmac in Marseille, I was embraced by the fans because of the reputation I had, because of what had gone before. You know, they were fascinated with English culture, certainly football culture, and football culture of a bygone era, kind of the 80s, and kind of football hooliganism and the way their clubs were structured. You know, they idolised the British game from afar. So I was seen as this kind of maverick English personality that was going over. The last player they'd had from England before me, who'd done well, I think, was Chrissy Waddle. So, you know, the kind of route map was there, albeit Chris Waddle's a hell of a player compared to me. So I just went over and I just give it me all. You know, I turned up every day. I tried as the same way I'd always done, and they took me to the heart. You know, I did lots of simple things like, you know, we'd have probably 200, 300, 400 people at training during the week. Sometimes they'd be allowed in, sometimes they wouldn't. They'd be outside the training ground, and I just make sure, you know, the same way I was stopped for when I was a young lad standing outside Belfield in the school holidays asking for an autograph. And same way I did at City, at Carrington, you know, I just stopped and I'd get out the car, I'd sign autographs, get photos with everybody. And it wasn't the done thing in France. The players used to just drive past all the French players, and there was almost a disconnect. And for me, I was grateful to play for the football club. I was buzzing that they took to me before I'd kicked the ball for them, considering the fact that I was coming off a ban in England and a lot of baggage. And I was thankful to play for their club at that time, obviously leaving QPR, who were not, you know, doing well in England, to play for Marseille, who were doing well in France. You know, I embraced it, and, you know, they took me into the heart. And from you know, I still got an incredible rapport with the club. I mean, only last week I was, you know, in discussions with the club about going back in a role to maybe take a coaching position at the club. But something's obviously popped up in England that allows me to kind of be a head coach, possibly, you know, manager. So at the minute I've had to shelve that, but it's certainly somewhere I'll look to go back and be a part of one day, because I'll never forget the way they were with me, and I'd love to repay that love I got off the fans by giving them some, you know, things to be cheerful about on a football pitch at some point in the future.
Spoke a lot about like your resilience and arguably knocking people ahead of you off their perch, because that's the nature of the game, like you say. But two questions in one, really. What was like your biggest achievement in the game? I know you spoke about the England cap and stuff like that. And then what was arguably your biggest low, and how did you overcome? And arguably then on the flip of that, how did you develop on your biggest achievement?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you ask any player, I think making your debut is the biggest achievement, because, you know, there's a lot that goes into that. You know, when you make your debut, certainly in the Premier League, because that's usually the dream that most young lads set off for, to play a Premier League game. So your mind's geared to that from
as early as you can remember. That's everything you fantasize about. Every time you got a new kit at Christmas or for your birthday, you were scoring a goal in the back garden, recreating those moments. So, you know, your grandparents and parents and school teachers and school friends and everybody who's part of that journey leads you to that moment where, you know, you make your debut. And you know, for me, I used to sit in school and think, wow, what it'd be like to say you've played in the Premier League or you've played for England. You never ever thought about finance or making money or anything like that. It was the prestige of, you know, forever. You know, you've played one Premier League game or one game in the Football League, as it, you know, when I was growing up, that was it. You'd played in the league, and I come from Liverpool, which is a soccer hotbed, and people would say, oh, what a player he was, or what a player he was. And they would always compare players, and they'd say, oh, well, he never played in the league. You know, he's got 500 league appearances, he's got this, he's got that. So for me, the biggest achievement was to get that one league appearance, because that meant that you could start to achieve every other goal. And also we've vindicated every other person along your journey who'd believed in you, who'd encouraged you, who took you to training, who'd driven you in a car, who'd done everything they could to get you to that point. So for me, the biggest achievement was vindicating everybody's belief in you to that point by making your professional debut. And I'll go back to what I spoke about in the England thing before. So I'm in the England setup, and Kev spoke about what would you talk about to your younger self, and I think it does come back in here nicely. I was constantly chasing people down. So I needed I'm like a greyhound with a rabbit, you know, I need something to chase. If I get to the top or people say I'm brilliant, I'm shite. I get complacent and I go, oh yeah, I am brilliant. I am really good at that. And no, so I'm, you know, as driven as I can be, but I'm really driven when people tell me I can't do something. So the best thing someone ever does for me for motivation is tell me I can't do it. And the world I live in is great for me, because a lot of people say I can't do things or don't have a great opinion of me. But then when I got to 30, I met a guy called Steve Black, and I was at QPR, and everybody was telling me, oh, he's brilliant, this guy, wait till you work with him. And I was thinking, I've been around the block, what can be so great about him? And we sat down and discussed over a coffee. We were discussing, you know, performance and moving forward. And he says to me, do you think you can get better? So at this point, I'm 30 years of age. I'm playing in the Premier League. I'm at QPR. You know, your best years, you know, you're thinking are behind you. You're going, yeah, you know what? You know, you peak at 28 or whatever they tell you, 26, 27, 28. And, you know, you're in a position where you want to play till you're 34, 35, 36 or 40 if you've done yoga all your life and all the right foods. So they tell you, you know, your best years are probably behind you. So I spoke to Black. He says to me, do you think you can improve? And I give him that answer. You know, you peak 28, 29, your best years are behind you. He says to me, well, you might as well just retire then. So it's the first time anybody's ever said. So I was like, what do you mean you might as well retire? He said, well, if you can't get better, what are you doing it for? What's the point in doing it? You're only going to get worse. It's not going to be enjoyable. You might as well spew what you're doing. Or certainly when this contract ends, stop what you're doing and get onto some other profession where you can get up in the morning and get better every day. I kind of was a little bit perplexed at it and went away and thought about what he was saying. And the next time I spoke to him, when I went back, he was absolutely spot on. And it flipped my mindset over from, I was chasing other things down. And if he flipped my mind over, a number of conversations then started between me and him. And my psyche changed from, it's not what other people that are doing. Because I'd always been, where's Lampard, where's Gerrard? If they're training in the summer, in the off season, I need to be going out running. I'd get up in the morning because I thought I'm behind Steven Gerrard and Frank Lampard, and I need to be out running in the off season. Because I was always chasing other people. I was always setting my goals by where other people were and chasing them down as a kind of route map. And Blackie changed my route map to this Kaizen philosophy. So you'll see it on a couple of my social media feeds. It just says Kaizen, which is, he got it from, I think, Toyota. They used it as a slogan when he went and spent time out with them. And this guy's worked in the NFL. He's worked for Warren Gatland. He's worked with Graham Henry at the All Blacks. He's worked with every single elite or a lot of elite sporting environments. And honest, the best I've met and I've spent time with. And he puts things into place. He talks a lot all the time about common sense, but not common practice. So everybody's looking for all these marginal gains things when they're actually not doing the basics really, really well. And on this thing, he challenges me, you're not getting better. So, we go on this process of this Kaizen, which is the continuous state of improvement. And it came about because I said to him, well, how did Johnny Wilkinson become the best fly half in the world? How does that happen? And Blackie says, dead easy. And then he breaks it down for you. And actually, once he's broken it down for you, you do go, all right, yeah, actually, it's a lot more attainable than what it is when you just say Johnny Wilkinson is the best in the world. He broke it down into 7 components, albeit all very, very difficult, and everyone needed taken care of. But actually, if you did them, you would just get a marked improvement. There was no way you couldn't improve by doing these basics. And he said when he put that foundation in place for Johnny, it was natural that he was just going to get better and better and better and fulfill his potential. It was up to him how far he could push that and whether he had world level potential. And as it turned out with Johnny, he did. He said, but everybody will maximise the potential if they take this pathway. So at that point, my mindset flicked over from chasing people down and having someone out in front of you, like a rabbit in a hare, a greyhound in a hare, and chasing after them. And then when you catch them, you kind of settle and you plateau a little bit until you get your next goal and so on and so forth. Or you have this continuous state of improvement, this Kaizen mindset, which is, I'm just going to get up tomorrow and I'm just going to get better. And I'm just going to be a better version of me. And I'm just going to improve me. And if I keep doing that on a daily basis, and again, you're talking to the man in the mirror, you're looking in the mirror, you're happy with what's looking back, you've got this, he'd say to me, well, just improve that. You can improve, if for instance, you want to be a player, well, you want to improve, the training session finishes. If you just go home, you're not going to improve. You've got to go in the gym, maybe, but some days you can't go in the gym because you've got a tough session tomorrow. You've got to find a way of practicing your basics. Go out, practice your passing for half an hour. Go out and practice your control for half an hour. Get yourself fitter, get your sleep better. There's so many facets that you can, depending on what you're doing, if you actually break it down, you can put it into small components that you can find improvements. If you do that, you will get better. You can't break it down into so many small areas and then improve those areas and not get better. It's just not something that, human beings would do. So once I flipped that mindset over of I was no longer competing with anybody else, I was just trying to improve myself on a daily basis. And an enormous performance increase happened on the pitch, because what happened to me then, I ended up through that process going and outsourcing external training. So we would train at QPR Monday, Tuesday, off Wednesday, in Thursday, Friday, game Saturday, off Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, so on and so forth in a normal week. And I didn't think the level of training at QPR was at the required quality. So what I'd have done before I met Blackie, I would have moaned and had to go with the coaches and been miserable and got affected and maybe got frustrated and lashed out or something had happened. After I met Blackie, I said, okay, well, that's what it is. Well, they can't help it. They're trying the best. That's QPR. I went and outsourced an external coach to fit the things I felt I was missing in training. So I ended up with Steve finding a guy called Jonathan Griffin at St Mary's University in Twickenham, which was not far from QPR's training ground of where I lived. And I would go and train with him on a Monday afternoon, on a Tuesday afternoon, and on a Wednesday on my day off. And my physical distance, I think I was covering around 12.5K in the Premier League and 1,000 to 1,100 metres high intensity, which is kind of base mark for what coaches would use as a physical output of Premier League players. I mean, the average would be about 11.5K, so on and so forth for my position. And I found that I was doing, say, 12.8. So I'd covering more distance, but my high intensity went up to like 1,1700. So I just become a lot more efficient because we broke performance down into smaller components, which became footballers don't know how to turn. They don't know how to run and turn. And when we broke it down, because this Kaizen mindset was on me and we had explored an improvement in many, many areas, I ended up finding little footwork drills and functional core stuff that you'd never do in football, stuff that I'd never done in a football environment. But because I went out of it and I had a fresher pair of eyes looking at it, and because I had this Kaizen mindset of small improvements, I wasn't looking for big jumps. I mean, most players can get a 6% performance increase, physical performance increase from being hydrated. and yet will not be hydrated, but will be taking this shot before the game because, you know, this is a caffeine shot and everyone's saying it's a marginal gain in it. Well, marginal gains only work if you're covering off all the bases. You know, I've spent time with Team Sky, Sir Dave Brailsford, so on and so forth, and been fortunate enough to be embedded in a lot of elite level environments. And when you see what they're doing, it's actually common sense, you know, but as Blackie says, common sense, but not common practice. And you young people out here, you'll all be thinking there's got to be some big magic thing that we can't get to. Well, there's not. There's you. And if your mindset is you're going to get better tomorrow or today, and then the next day and the next day and the next day, you mightn't see the improvements, you mightn't see the gains, but trust me, over a 6, 12, 18-month period, you'll be amazed at how far you can push yourself as a person. Now, to say you want to be world class, sitting here today to world class is such an enormous jump. The likelihood is you will be overwhelmed by that, and the minute the setbacks come, you'll be gutted because you won't think you're getting closer to reaching your gain. But when you have a mindset, a Kaizen mindset of marginal improvement every single day, if you do have a day, which we all do, where you don't get better and you might just sit on the couch and watch Netflix because you're knackered or you run down, then that's fine, because if you look at the 30-day cycle that you're on, a monthly cycle, well, you've had 1 or 2 bad days and you've had 28 good days where you've improved. If you keep churning that out, trust me, whatever your field is, whatever your profession is, whatever your goal is, whatever your dream is in life, you will get a lot closer towards it than just sitting there thinking about it. And as I say, once I flipped my mind over, I got a massive improvement north of 30, which I wasn't expecting. I'd been kind of preconditioned from everyone I'd spoke to and everyone had listened to that wasn't going to happen. And then also once I flipped it into the second dream of mine, you know, my first dream to be a professional footballer and do that. My second dream was to be a very successful coach and achieve, you know, further in the game the stuff that I never was able to as a player, because I was limited to being 5'10", not having supreme genetics to be able to cover 100 meters in less than 10 seconds.
Joey, what was your biggest challenge when you sort of took over from Fleetwood, going from obviously playing in the Premier League and the Championship to working with a side in like League One? What did you find your biggest challenge going into management?
Certainly learning the level. So when you haven't played at a level, it's tough to gauge it. I mean, I always remember the stories about Glenn Alder when he became a coach. You know, he'd coach a player. I think you might have been Everett Swindon, actually, weirdly. But he said,
yeah, I was, yeah.
He'd come in and say, "I can do this." And the stuff that Glenn found easy to do as a player was very, very difficult. But in his world, it was quite simple to do, and he couldn't understand that other people just couldn't do it. And I think that's usually why players who've been great players, you know, have tended not to become as good a coaches as they were players, because it is difficult when, you know, you do things relatively easy that other people find really, really difficult. So coming into Fleetwood, firstly, was learning about the level, the capabilities of the players, and what you could ask from them and expect for them to reasonably be able to deliver under pressure on a match day.
Reflecting on this Kaizen mindset, could you give like some examples on what you how you use it now, on like small examples that would like help improve just like growing up or just like being successful in general?
Yeah, it's usually the stuff that you don't want to do. So the stuff that you know you have to do that you don't want to do. So when Kev spoke to me this morning, I've got a couple of things on today, and I'm like, I need to get a running. I've just got to go for a run. I don't want to do it. Lying in my bed this morning, I just don't want to do it. But I've said to myself last night, you need to get a run in this. You know, you've said you're going to go for a run, and part of the Kaizen philosophy is, you know, taking that time just to go and do something that you've said you're going to do. But the first thing he talks about in that is making sure your room's clean. So getting up in the morning, tidying your room, making your bed. You know, as simple as that is, there's a sense of achievement. You've done something. You've done a job in the day that you need to do. And again, you know, it will vary from person to person, but it's just some people get up and you know, I've been in them moments where I've been depressed or have felt sorry for myself, for the world again, you know, because we all have that gamut of emotions. Some have it more frequently than others. I get that. Some people have, you know, problems where it's, you know, they need to take medication to alleviate that. But for most, it is a self-remedy, and that usually comes from, you know, certainly physical exercise. I think, you know, whether that's you can or can't do that is individual to that person. But if you can't do that, then I think, you know, there's certainly something you can do with achievement. So setting yourself goals, albeit small attainable goals, and then achieving them. And what I see people do is they set themselves these, as I say, you go from there and say, right, I want to be the best in the world at that. Well, that's overwhelming for anybody. You have to break it down into very, very attainable chunks. And as I say, if you can do that on a daily basis, on a micro level, rather than a kind of macro, kind of short, medium, long-term level, albeit having that macro, you know, short, medium, long-term plan in place. You know, the micro is your day-to-day, so your small decisions that you have to make every day, as I say, getting up in the morning, tidying your bed, making sure that you take a bit of time to look after yourself. As I say, you get up in the morning, you have to spend 24 hours a day with yourself till the day you die. So if you don't like that person, if you're not comfortable with that person, or that person feels like, you know, you've set yourself a goal and then you've let yourself down, then it's going to be difficult for you to fulfill your full potential. I think people only start fulfilling the full potential when they have that real self-confidence. You know, Jordan Peterson talks, and going into one here a little bit, but Jordan Peterson talks about he'd studied lobsters and the central nervous system attached to lobsters, so on and so forth. But he found that they'd walked upright and with the shoulders back and the heads held high, and that when humans did it, there was a cortisone and a chemical release from the brain into the spinal cord that made you feel better. So you think about it, when you feel shit and you feel down, you walk around, you don't look anyone in the eye, you're slumped over. But when you're confident, you're proud, and you're happy, you know, your shoulders are a bit more upright and your head's up and you're making eye contact with people. And he spoke about the ability of being people who make eye contact with people. And I've found myself doing this at different times. When you walk around and you're looking to make eye contact with people, you pull out, whether you're walking through a city centre or not, the people who are on a similar wavelength, who are full of themselves, having full of confidence, in a good space mentally. And you avoid all the people who are just hurrying around with their heads held down, who are very insular and not really achieving the full potential. Honestly, when you read the Peterson book, it's a fascinating social experiment to walk around. But again, it comes back to me from the simplest things. It's not these big tough tasks. It's having a daily process for whatever your goal is. I don't know what your goal is, but whatever that goal is, have the highest possible goal you can, something that you are in your wildest dreams, put that out there and then work back from it. Understand the route map towards it, break it down into small attainable goals on a micro level and then on a macro level, and then just get after it. You know, there's some things you can't do. You're not going to be Queen of England because you haven't been born in the right spot. You're probably not going to win the 100 meters. Do you know what I mean? It's just, you're probably not going to be in the NBA unless you're 7'7". So there's stuff that you can't do because physically you can't do it. But then there's millions of things that you can do and that you can achieve.
Just touching on like aiming high and achieving your goals, did you have a backup plan in place if you weren't going to be a footballer or a coach? So something not to do with football.
I didn't really have a plan. You think about what you're going to do. You know, my alternatives were living, breathing around me every single day. You know, when I was trying to make my way. So it'd be your dad getting on. I'd be going to get the coach to Manchester, the National Express coach at 6:30 in the morning. Well, my dad was already up at 7 and out because he's a roofer, so he was out and about. And I'd be getting in at 6:30, 7:30 when my dad had been in. Half an hour, his tea would be on the table. And he'd been doing that for 35, 40 years. So, you know, that was there in front of me. That was clearly an option, getting a start off my dad on the roofs or my Uncle Peter. I had a few friends who were in kind of going down the military, wanting to join the army, so on and so forth. And then, you know, precursor to, you know, we were kind of in Iraq and Afghanistan not long after that. And obviously some of those guys ended up serving out there. And then, you know, I had a number of friends from kind of school who went down the kind of, you know, crime pathway, you know, selling drugs, dealing, that kind of thing. And again, really intelligent people, just took a completely different, you know, life journey based on, you know, the families that they grew up in or the area that they were born on, and decided, you know, there's no point me knuckling down at school, because even if I get all my GCSEs and then I go into sixth form, you know, the jobs that I had on the back end of that, I came from Knowsley, which had no sixth form provision. I think it's one of the only boroughs in the country that's got no sixth form provision, and then a ridiculous, I think 33% unemployment rate, or 20. I think I had a 29, might be up to 33 now, but it was 29% unemployment rate. So I think second or third in the country for an employment rate. So career prospects were not phenomenal. Even if you had an education, and there was a lot of people who left our school without an education, but even if you had one, it still wasn't like, oh, you were going to be a lawyer and earn 150 grand a year or whatever. So football or sport, for a lot of people where I come from, is a viable option to change your life and change the life of your loved ones as well. You know, being able to buy your mum a house and your grandmother a house is something that, although you've got your own selfish desire to be a player, there's lots of stuff, you know, when they were taking me to football in the pissing down rain, that you want to be able to do back for them. So football for me was that vehicle. That was plan A. Plan B was, I'm going to play football, so I'll drop into the non-league and I'll work my way back up.
You made a massive impression on me from that first moment. I know we spoke about it a lot when you come over. I'll always have a high opinion of you, mate. And because I know, I've seen it live. And I'll go back to the don't judge a book by its cover. I'm hoping, look, you give so much information that will be helpful to all the students and staff. But I hope they go away and think, do you know what? And I guarantee some will. They go away thinking, I wasn't expecting that. So thanks for everything, mate. I appreciate your time. I know you're really busy, but it's been exactly what I was hoping would come from this. So thanks again, mate. And I'll always think highly of you and forgive you, even if you made my family move to London and you took my shirt off me, mate. So thanks a lot. Sorry
about that, Kev. No, thank you. Some great questions. I've really enjoyed it. Listen, best of luck on your pathways where you go. No doubt you'll be successful if you're listening to Kev. He probably never tells you what a good player he was, but
I'll do all the time.
No,
I'm joking.
Don't worry about that. I know, but to be fair to him, he has got a great left peg. And again, Kev, listen, really enjoyed it, mate. Thanks for asking me on. Anytime, if you ever need me again, just feel free to give a shout. Great to speak to you.